I always say, if you want to know what's really important with parenting, ask someone who has more than 3 kids, because they will tell you what matters real fast. And that's part of why I have invited a very special mother today to come back and join us here on the Up-Level Dairy podcast, right ahead of Mother's Day this weekend. Sarah Daugherty from Paramount Calves talked with us the other day about her hacks for human resource management, but we're taking a different swing at a conversation and digging into what it means to be a high-performing manager at work and a high-performing mother at home. From performance pressure to kids' sports to setting priorities and saying no, any mom or dad who pursues excellence both at work and at home will relate and grab a few nuggets of wisdom from this honest conversation about hard decisions and what really matters. This one hit home for me, and I think it's going to do the same for you right here on the Up-Level Dairy podcast. This is the podcast for dairy farm owners, managers, and advisors who are committed to profitability, sustainability, and excellence. I'm your host, Peggy Coffeen, and it's my mission to bring you the conversations that will up-level your skill set and your mindset so you can be a top performer in the dairy farming business. And in our last episode, Sarah talked about the 4 cards she asks employees to rank about what matters most to them. Those cards were work-life balance, pay, interesting work, and recognition. We're going to pick up this conversation today by finding out how she ranks those 4 cards for herself and how it's changed.
So stepping away from the management side, you mentioned these cards that you were asking employees to rank so that you could better understand what was important to them. How do you rank those cards?
So good question. I think for right now, interesting work is on my top. I need to love to come, and I'm curious as the day is long, so sometimes I lose my focus when I get into information and I get off on a rabbit trail. But so interesting work is definitely my first one. Work-life balance is next. Money is important. You know, everybody wants more, but I do pretty well. And then I've moved recognition down to my 4th spot, where it used to be much higher. That used to be a lot more important to me, but I'm learning that does not motivate me like I thought it should, like I thought it did. Mm-hmm.
So 10 years ago, how would you have shuffled those cards?
So recognition would have been probably first.
And it's okay.
I wanted to be validated. I wanted everybody to think I was awesome. So that one would have been first. And then 10 years ago, where was I with kids? So I had a work-life balance probably would have been second. And then interesting work, and then again, money would be there, but probably last.
So interesting work is something that really drives you, but also that balance piece of family and work-life balance. And gosh, that term work-life balance, sometimes I think we should wipe it out of the English language.
It's a juggling act. One goes up, one comes down.
Yes. And so when I think of people in the industry or beyond, whatever, if I'm going to seek out those that I want to learn from and want to soak in some wisdom from, I'm going to ask a woman with 6 kids who also goes to work every day and manages 3,000 calves and 40 to 50 people. So I'm putting you in the expert seat of being not just a high-level manager, but a high-level, high-performing individual and a high-performing mother at the same time of 6 kids. And so what does that balance look like for you now?
So someone told me once, when I was trying to be perfect as I could be at all of it, that I had basically 2 choices. I could either lower my expectations, which I didn't like that answer, or I could choose what I wanted to focus my best efforts at. And I think that that's the route I took, and that's the one that I think has served me better. So it's kind of like a 3-legged stool for me. It's my home, meaning the physical place we live that needs caring. I'm still a housekeeper, homekeeper, whatever. I have my family, which is teaching and leading and assisting the people in my family. And then I have work. In this purse, they told me you can have 2 out of the 3, but all three, you're going to burn yourself out. And I was trying that, and I got very frustrated. And I literally quit wearing my Apple Watch because it was just another thing that told me I wasn't doing anything right? And didn't meet my goal. Like, I don't want to hear another thing. You're going in the drawer.
Like when you look at your sleep score and you're like, I'm just throwing in the towel. Like, what? It's just depressing.
I'm wearing my watch now because I know that if I meet my goal, good. If I don't, that's all right. At least I get my text messages without picking my phone up. So I take the good with the bad. But what I decided is there's certain areas of my house that I do want somewhat clean, right? I want to wake up in the morning and have my kitchen somewhat clean. The dishes are done and put away, and my laundry is not falling out the laundry room door, and we have clothes to wear. So those are the two things at home that I worry about. At work, I'm not going to lower my expectations. I might change the way I'm doing it, but I'm not going to lower my expectations. So, and it's the same thing with the core of my value. I want my kids to be kind. I want them to be of high character, and I want them to have good confidence. And within all of that, faith is very strong in my family, and we intertwine the love of Jesus and our faith with all of it. That's a big part of the reason why I think I can finally have a little clarity, is because I found that peace, I guess.
What did it take to find that?
I asked a lot. I prayed, and the answer is take care of your family. That's the answer. Well, what's my family? My family, it gets big, and some days it's 40 guys outside that need somebody because they don't have their mom here. And so I help with doctor's appointments and dentists and chiropractic and all those things. So the definition of family changes, but that's what my job is.
What was life like for you when you hit this point where you're like, I'm ready to decide, I'm ready to shift my perspectives?
Usually change comes because the alternative is painful. The alternative was I was traveling a lot, and my husband was in college and working a full-time job, and we had 4 kids, and between that 4 and 5 at the time. And I just felt like I wasn't doing anything well. And I was really down on myself, and my husband was frustrated, and I wasn't there for the big things for my kids. At that time, I had a dairy in Kansas, a large dairy that I was consulting for, and I was gone too much. So in some aspects, that recognition was getting the best of me. I wanted to be the nutritionist for 10,000 cows, but it wasn't where I needed to be what I could be my truest self, right? It wasn't where I needed to be. So it just, I think you make a decision. If I'm going to take care of my family, that means I'm going to be here for them. I'm going to be a better wife than I was, not making my husband do all the extra stuff, and then also be able to do a good job with whatever career path I took. But I know a career for me it's part of my life. It's part of who I am, and I didn't want to, nor could I give that up. So it's just a matter of changing it. Like I said, I felt like I wasn't good at anything, and I think that's where I decided you just have to do something different. And then the word intentional kept coming back to me in one way or another. And you just, once you keep hearing something over and over, if you choose to ignore it, then I think that's to your own detriment. But I chose to say, okay, if I'm going to be intentional, what are the things that are important to me? And this is something that I would recommend people grab it. I got it from Target, and it says, "Where will you be 5 years from today?" Have you ever seen this book?
No. Tell me.
It's super simple, but it's like a workbook. So you write in it. That was my family when I did it. They were little. So it helps you outline what your values are. So your top values in life, and you fill it all out, and so that thing kind of helped me walk the path of intentionality.
Sarah, you just shared some of your personal experiences, and I'm really grateful that you've done that. And just be honest about how challenging it is to balance these different roles and wanting to do really well as a mom, wanting to do really well at work and in your career. And I know that a lot of the people that listen to this podcast are doing the same thing, right? We're trying to do it all at work, and then we're trying to do it all at home. And you've been there, and you're still doing it. You're just doing it differently now because of the decisions you made. But speak to the rest of us. If you could offer a couple pieces of advice to the younger Sarah, Sarah 10 or 15 years ago, or those of us that are in that place that you were of having some children, but also having a drive to want to advance our careers and maybe gain recognition at sometimes or have that interesting work. What can we learn from you?
I guess the one thing I would say is I shifted the recognition for a reason, because you have to find that the value that you bring is with the individuals and the influence that you have with people and the influence that you have to lead and to change for the better. So I mentioned the awards that I got with GPS, and I think that made me feel a part of the group and a valuable part of the group. Looking back, being a little older, that's not what really matters. What really matters is, did I bring value and did I influence people in a good way? Because that's more lasting and it's more meaningful. So I think that that's one thing, if I could have gone back and told myself 10 years ago. The other thing that I would say is that I've learned that there's really no experts. There's people that have more information and more experience, but once you really dial in and you start looking at information and situations, whether it's at home with your own family or with calf performance and growth, be critical and make your own decisions and with input from others that have been there. So don't take the expert's word for it just because they say, and that's what everyone says. Keep a critical mind and make your own decisions. So that's the other thing I've learned. I think in parenting especially, that's true, because no two families are alike. And I think I've read 2 parenting books my whole life, and I thought they were both kind of full of it. So I was really like, okay, making my own decision on this. The trouble is, right, once you get to the end point, you can't go back and change what you've done. So, I've got 2 daughters in college now. So I'm starting to see a little bit of the fruits of our efforts. The thing I'm most proud of is they're both very hardworking and dependable. And so I guess the other piece of advice for people that have kids and they're growing is let them have a job. Let them work for somebody else. Let them have those responsibilities, because it helps when they're older and you can start to see that their independence grows faster, I think.
So what do those jobs look like for your girls that are now off in college?
So both of them started in farming. They raised calves for our cousin who had a dairy farm down the road when they were 13, 14 years old. They would drive a gator, or they literally walked one time. I'll never hear the end of that. In their milking boots, they had to walk 2.5 miles.
That's a great story. They will tell their grandkids that story. 2.5 miles, uphill both ways, right?
So that's how it started with them. My second daughter really doesn't enjoy agriculture as much. She's at UW La Crosse. She's majoring in health sciences, but she worked for my sister's chiropractic clinic, and so she cleaned the office and worked her way up to being a receptionist. So she learned about that. Our son is 16. He works at Weber's Meats in Cuba City. He cleans and he works the retail shop. Our daughter that's 14 doesn't have a job yet, but this summer she's gonna find one. It starts with if they can milk cows or raise calves for somebody. I think that's a good place to start. And like I said, with Clayton at Weber's, he's learning a lot there too.
So that's been an important thing that you've really seen the fruits of that labor and efforts is the kids having jobs. And maybe you could speak into this too. This is a conversation that I have with a lot of my dairy friends, right? That have kids that are in sports. And boy, can sports really take over a family's life and a child's life and compete with the time that's available for them to even have a job. So what have sports been like for your family, and how have you navigated that?
All of our kids are in sports. We've only done one travel team, and that was just too much. It took too much of our family's time. It took too much money. It took too much priority. So we only did that once, and I'm not interested in doing that again. So Sophia's our oldest. She's at UWP. Our second is Allison, who's at UW La Crosse, and she's actually running track for UW La Crosse. Oh, wow. And then, Clayton is in football and wrestling. And Bethany, it doesn't matter what sport, she loves it. So we're constantly going to track meets and softball games and wrestling and football. And so one thing I had to do when things were just too busy is I sat the kids down, the 4 older ones, and I said, write down all the things you're in. And then the ranking thing again. I don't know why I always do that, but then rank them now. Okay, now put them, what's your favorite ones? Write them top down. I said, now count to the 4 and then put a line for everything else. And that's what we had to do. We're like, everybody can do 4 things and everything else has got to go. So no gymnastics, no soccer. We try to let them choose what they enjoyed the most, and then hopefully it kind of track fits all of us for the most part. The way track came up is one of our kids wanted a horse and they wanted a rodeo. And being around rodeo, my husband knew how much time and money and everything else that took. And he's like, Sarah, we don't want to be a rodeo family. So kudos to those that are doing it. So I told my daughter, I said, I'll get you a nice pair of track shoes and I'll take you wherever you want to go. And she ended up going to the finals in the United States Junior Olympics and went to California.
So that was a really good decision to say, let's not do rodeo, let's do track. And it took her that far. Holy cow.
And the thing is, and so they went a second time. Now 2 of our daughters have gone, and they got to run at the Eugene, Oregon track. And then hopefully this July we'll go to Texas A&M, which I'm really hoping. In that fact, you're giving them, I think, the power to make a choice. And then you're allowing them to let it take them and be successful at it. And so I think it was a really good thing. Turned out good.
You looked at your own priorities, and let's rank ours. There's this ranking system that seems like it's been a really good kind of coaching mechanism for you to implement at work and at home and for yourself.
But again, it's about values and priorities and being intentional.
That word one more time. Intentional. And Sarah, you've shared some really great, honest insights about calf management, people management, kid management. Is there anything else you'd like to add on those aspects?
I guess I'd like to just take a minute and maybe give a little credit where it's due to my mom. I mentioned that earlier. She had 7 children, and neither she nor my dad were able to finish college, but they've got 2 kids with bachelor's degrees, 2 kids with master's degrees, 2 kids with PhDs, and 1 that's a doctor of chiropractic. And we all just keep on going, and we all do our own things, but I think we all try to do it well. And so my mom has a plaque on her wall that one of the kids gave her, and it's, I don't know exactly the verbiage, but it says that your biggest accomplishment might not be something you specifically do in your life, but it might be the people you raise. And I try to keep that in my mind too, because I hope to have really great accomplishments in my own life, but I hope that my kids are even better. So I think that's a part that hopefully we all want to do well, but we also want to continue teaching others so that they can do even better.
And your role as a mother at home, inspired by your own mom, it sounds like an incredible human. But that impacts the way that you manage people and bring in that level of care.
Right. And I think that's true with anyone who has women that influence them and parents that influence, right? So same thing with Justin's mom. She's true grit and beauty all rolled into one. She's a Southern Texas lady who she works for a chemical plant, actually the one that makes Element, the bypass methionine product that I used to feed her quite a bit. She works there, and she has risen through the ranks, and now she manages a bunch of men that work at the chemical plant.
So you've been surrounded by some pretty incredible women in your life, and you get to take what you learn from them, live it out, and influence your own people in your own house. Oh gosh, Sarah. So this has been great. I just really appreciate the conversation that we've been able to have. And one of the things that I really enjoy doing with our guests here on Up Level Dairy Podcast too is asking you a few more questions about you. And so these are the Up Level 5. These are questions that dig into you and your personal life, professional life a little bit more. And I think we might hit a few different angles than we've hit so far, but we're going to wrap up with these. And so question number 1 I have for you is, what does success look like to you?
A weed-free garden.
Is this a literal garden or proverbial garden?
Actually, both. So if my friends on Facebook ever see a garden and I'm in it, that means everything else in my life must be going pretty good because I've finally taken the time to do something I really want to do, which is have a good garden. But I won't do it until my other stuff is going well. So for me, I feel like I've had a garden before, but when I can't tend to it, it just grows up, and then I'm staring out my kitchen window at something I'm not doing well, right? I don't want to see that. But I do want to have a garden. So once I can do my garden well, that means that my other things are in a row, and I have a garden with no weeds.
That's extremely metaphorical. It's so much more than a garden.
It is. It's funny because I actually used that metaphor, and I didn't realize until right now, but when we did our conference, our leadership conference for our management team, there's a movie called The Shack. And in that movie, there's a man walking through this garden that's just full, and he's trying to get through it, and the woman says to him, well, what are you thinking? And he said, this place, it's a mess. It's just a mess. And then they pan up, and it's a beautiful, intrinsically weaved garden, but he's standing in the middle of it. He can't see anything but a mess. So that's why I try to tell people here too, is we are in it every day. We're in the trenches. It's hard. The middle of summer is actually a really hard time to raise calves. I said, you're in the middle of it. It looks like a mess, but it's the big picture. What the calf goes through from the time you handle them until the time that they go back to the dairy, it's going to be good.
That garden exists in so many shapes and forms. Oh, that's a good one. Okay, question number 2. 3 words. How do you want to show up each day?
Positive, valuable, and I would say the last one is probably helpful. No, I'm a servant leader. I want to be able to help people by getting them the tools they need to do their job well. I want to do it in a positive way, and I want to bring value.
And that's exactly what you do.
Well, thanks. I don't know. We're working on it.
In honor of Mother's Day, which is just right around the corner, I know you mentioned what an amazing mother you have and your mother-in-law as well. Are there other moms that have influenced you that you look up to?
I know if I start saying too many, I'll leave lots out because there's actually a whole bunch. One that comes to mind that she and I have paralleled our lives a lot is Deb Im. So Deb Im was the director of agriculture at Southwest Tech. She and I actually were hired at the exact same time there. She stayed and she rose through the ranks. She has 6 children, very similar in age to ours. Her husband has an organic dairy farm. She has just now switched her job from Southwest Tech to she's an agriculture banker now. But she was always really highly involved in 4-H and agriculture and her family business and Southwest Tech, and raised really great kids. So Deb I would say, as honest as you can ever want somebody to be. So if I have hard questions, I'll call her.
And Sarah, what words do you live by?
Well, I joke with my kids that on my headstone when I die, it's going to be very simple what it says. And what I say constantly to them and what I believe is how you say things matters. So those are words that I live by, and I try and teach my kids. How you say things matters. It does matter what you say, but it also matters with what intent you say them. So that's kind of a motto that I repeat regularly.
And it goes right back into that intentionality that you've talked about and those core values. And last question in our Up Level 5, Sarah, is what is your next up level? So, I mean, this is kind of a loaded question because I know you've been trying to prioritize, focus, simplify, but I know you're always looking at what's next too. So what is your next personal, professional up level, some piece of your life that you do want to be able to take to a higher level right now?
I'm trying to be sure that I'm happy where I am for a while. I want to be good at what I'm doing. So right now I'm focusing on being good at what I'm doing. What I would like to do better is I would like to be able to communicate with my team better. So I would probably try and invest some time I'm good with numbers. I'm not good with languages. So it's difficult for me to learn. But I feel like I really need to invest some time in learning to communicate better with my team. So in this case, it's learning some Spanish.
So rather than look at what's next that pulls more time and attention away to something else, it's going deeper into what you're doing and saying you want to just harness more of that piece of what you do already.
Right, because it's hard to have any meaningful conversations about how kids are or how their day is going if I have to use the Google Translate app, or if I have to have somebody come help me. I know I'm not going to be an expert at it, but I at least would like to be able to have better conversations.
Yeah.
So that's one. And then I always feel like my husband gets the short end of the stick. I think I need to be more intentional with some fun things we do. Right when COVID hit, we bought very cheap but a very fun boat. And so that's something that he really enjoys, and it's fun. We have a good time, and I think I just need to make sure that I also spend time with my partner in life. He deserves some time too, and I feel like that's probably something I haven't been doing a great job of.
And that's just as important as all those other things. And again, that's why I'm so glad that we've been able to have a really good conversation today about not just employee management and raising a ton of calves, but really real life. And I hope that's what our friends that are listening can walk away with, is just some good insights from a person that is doing amazing and incredible things in an intentional way.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Sarah as much as I did about management, motherhood, and balancing the drive for a high-performing family and a high-performing career. And I hope there's been a few nuggets that you've been able to take away too. I'm Peggy Coffeen, and thank you for listening to the Up Level Dairy Podcast. And to all of our dairy moms out there listening, thank you for everything you do every single day on your dairies and your families, at your work, and in your communities.